This video is done for you to prepare for your final exams, which is on the 14th of February. So if you were to be asked a question about discussing the roles of media in global context, for example, as an information provider and interpreter, a watchdog, policymaker, gatekeeper, diplomat, and peace promoter, how would you need to answer this question? So first of all, give an introduction by saying the media plays a crucial role in shaping perceptions, influencing policy, and facilitating communication in global context. So when you want to explain each and every one of the roles of media, start off by the information provider and interpreter. So as an information provider, the media serves as a critical channel through which news, events, and knowledge are disseminated to the public, meaning that the function of the media as an information provider is to give information to the public. Okay, so this is not only to deliver facts and data, but to also interpret the information from the people that is giving the information to the audience so that the audience can understand complex issues. So, through the analysis, commentary, and investigative reporting, the media interprets the significance of events and provides context, making it easier for people to comprehend or understand the implications of news on their lives and the world at large. So, basically, the media simplifies the news for the public to understand better. Okay, for example, you can give this an example. During the global health crisis like COVID-19 pandemic, media outlets has been playing a very important role to explain about the virus, the importance of taking the vaccination, understanding the public health guidance or guidelines, and the impact on economies and societies. So that is the function of the media as an information provider and interpreter. So you can answer your exam question just like that. Okay. Otherwise, the other examples based on the slide is the MH370 disappearance, the 1MDB, the Arab Spring, and etc. So the next one is if you were to be asked the role of media as a watchdog. So as a watchdog, we've discussed it many times before. Okay, it monitors the actions of governments, corporations, and any institutions that to make sure that they are accountable for their actions. So that's the meaning of the word watchdog itself. Okay, so the function is to expose corruption, expose injustice, expose the abuse of power, and this is to actually protect the public interest and promote transparency when it comes to information. Okay, so because the public at large, they might not have access to information. So when it comes to investigative reporting, journalists that does investigations on specific politicians, governments, and etc., they provide information that exposes these people if they were to do corruption or anything that's illegal and etc., so that the public will know and the people involved will be held accountable. They will have to face the consequences of their actions. So investigative journalism is a cornerstone of this role, with reporters often spending months or even years uncovering stories that bring significant issues to light. You can give some of your own examples, like the 1MDB. There's some in the slides that mention about the President Nixon scandal, the Watergate scandal. You can use that as an example to give in your exam as well. Okay, so for the third one, the policymaker role is that the media influences public policy and government decision. Okay, through framing issues in particular ways, the media can shape the policy agenda, drawing attention to specific problems and advocating for certain solutions. Okay, this influence can prompt lawmakers and public officials to act either by enacting new legislation or new rules and policies, amending existing laws, or implementing policies to address the issues highlighted by the media reports. So the media's role or focus on climate change, for example, we've discussed this before, played a significant role in pushing for environmental policies and action at both national and international level. Okay, you can also mention the media exposing about the birthday issue, where they wanted for a clean and fair election. You can also mention about climate change, where people have been protesting a lot about climate change for laws to be changed. You can also mention about the Internal Security Act, the ISA, which was abolished due to the media exposing and changing and becoming a policymaker when it comes to these kind of issues. Or you can give any examples that you feel that is suitable. Just mention some example. Okay. All right. The next one is the media role as a gatekeeper. Okay, as a gatekeeper, the media determines which stories and perspective are given prominence and which are marginalized, meaning that the media decide what to give you and what not to give you, what news to present to you and what kind of news they want to conceal or they don't want to expose to you. Okay. So this role involves deciding what kind of information is newsworthy or important for you and how it should be presented to the public. But sometimes the media, depending on the ownership of the media, they do not expose the certain issues to you. They don't want you to know about it. Okay. So it's a selection process of what they want you to know and what they don't want you to know. Okay, so through this selection process, the media can influence public discourse, meaning they can influence your perception, your conversation by highlighting certain topics while ignoring others. Okay. So the gatekeeping role is crucial during election cycles, where the media's focus on particular candidates or issues can affect public opinion and electoral outcomes. However, this role has been transformed by the rise of social media and citizen journalism, which have democratized information dissemination, challenging traditional media's gatekeeping authority. Okay, so give an example of how a media has been a gatekeeper with whatever important examples that you can give. Okay. Here you can use the Malaysian general election as an example. We've discussed this so many times in the past, so you can put that as your answer for your exam. And then the role of media as a diplomat. Okay, I mentioned this to you before, where the media can act as an important aspect between two countries. We've given you lots of examples. Okay, so let's just read here. In its role as a diplomat, the media facilitates dialogue and understanding between different cultures and nations or countries by reporting on international events, showcasing diverse cultural practices, and providing platforms for a cross-cultural exchange. The media can bridge gaps between societies and promote mutual understanding. This role is particularly important in times of conflict or tension, where media can either contribute to peace-building efforts by promoting dialogue and empathy or exacerbate conflicts through biased or inflammatory reporting. Okay, an example of the media's diplomatic role can be seen in its coverage on humanitarian crisis, which can mobilize international support and aid for affected regions. So basically, sometimes the media mentions about a certain humanitarian crisis. For example, what happened in Turkey. People come in, or different countries come in to help. Okay. Also, it can also be something of a negative response where people, the media mention all the bad things about Palestine and Hamas and etc., where people tend to sympathize with Israel a bit more, for example. And so basically, the role as a diplomat can either strengthen relationship between two countries. Please also refer to the slides that I've given to you in class. That also has very important notes that you can use to answer your exam questions. And I've also copied some of the slide presentation in this video as well for you to refer to. So some of the examples, please read through to help you answer the exams. Okay. All right. Now, as a peace promoter, the media has the potential to contribute to the resolution of conflicts and the promotion of peace. Okay, either or. All right. Through peace journalism, media practitioners focus on conflict resolution. Remember, I told you something about the Rwanda crisis, where the media use radio stations to promote peace between the Tutsi and the Hutus tribe, okay, because they were having a civil war at that time. So through peace journalism, media practitioners focus on conflict resolution, highlight peace initiatives, and give voice to victims of violence. Okay. So this approach involves reporting in a way that emphasizes common ground and seeks to de-escalate tension, to reduce tension, rather than sensationalizing conflict or adopting a polarizing stance. The media's role in supporting peace processes such as the Good Friday Agreement. Okay, you can look it up. What is the Good Friday Agreement? How did that happen? Okay, it happened in Northern Ireland. It shows how thoughtful reporting and coverage can facilitate dialogue and reconciliation. Okay, so basically each of these roles underscores the media's significant impact on society and its capacity to influence global affairs. By fulfilling these multifaceted roles, the media not only informs and engages the public, but also plays a critical part in shaping the political, social, and cultural landscape. So if you were to answer your exam question like how I've explained here, and provided that you look at the notes on the slides that we have discussed in class and this video that I'm presenting to you right now, you shouldn't have a problem to answer this particular question. Okay, now let's move on to the next question. The next question would ask you to compare and contrast international press theories, which is the communist theory, authoritarian theory, libertarian theory, social responsibility theory, and in your answers, you need to discuss how each of these media systems shape the flow of information and the degree of freedom given to the press. Okay, all right. So the communist theory, the philosophy in control, is that the communist or Soviet communist theory advocates for the press to be controlled by the state as a tool to advance the goals of the socialist state and support the Communist Party's objectives. The theory posits that the media should serve the working class and contribute to the education and development of a socialist society. There's more information on the slide that I've given you in the class. Please have a look. You have to mention the flow of information for this as well. So the information flow is tightly controlled and censored, with content that supports the state policies and ideologies. There is little to no room for dissenting opinions or criticisms of the government. Okay, what about the press freedom? There is no freedom. There is no independence in terms of the press, meaning the press has no freedom. Its role is not to question, but to promote the interests of the state and its ideology. Okay? All right, now, if you were to compare it with the authoritarian state, the philosophy and control is that the authoritarian state sees the press as being under the control of the ruling authority, not necessarily a monarch, but any ruling elite, with its primary role being to support and advance the policies of the government. The media is seen as a tool to maintain the status quo and social order. Okay, so what about the flow of information? The government closely monitors and censors the media content, allowing only what it deems supportive of its interests. Criticism of the government and dissent are often very suppressed. What about the press freedom? There is very limited press freedom within the authoritarian model. The media operates under strict regulations and oversight, with penalties for stepping out of line. Okay, the fourth one is the libertarian theory. The libertarian theory is also known as the free press theory. Okay, it advocates for the press to be independent of government control. It supports the idea of an open marketplace of ideas where the truth emerges from the competition of various viewpoints. It emphasizes individual freedom and the right to publish without censorship. And what about the flow of information? You have to mention this, okay? Information flows freely without government interference. The media serves as a watchdog, holding the government and other powers accountable. What about the press freedom? The press enjoys a high degree of freedom with minimal state intervention. And this theory supports self-regulation over government regulation. Okay. Now, the social responsibility theory, the philosophy and control, the social responsibility theory expands on the libertarian theory model by adding layers of responsibility, where it supports while it supports press freedom, it also emphasizes the media's obligation to serve the public interest responsibly. The theory suggests that with freedom comes the duty to provide accurate, truthful reporting and to ensure diverse viewpoints are represented. What about the flow of information? The media is free from government control but is encouraged to self-regulate to ensure accuracy, objectivity, and fairness. It aims to provide a balanced and diverse range of views reflecting the plurality of society. What about the press freedom? The press is free but operates under the premise of social responsibility. It is expected to adhere to ethical standards and to consider the impact of its reporting on society. Okay, now if you were to compare and contrast in terms of control and freedom between the four, the communist and authoritarian theories both advocate for state control of the media, whereas the libertarian and social responsibility theories emphasize media independence and freedom. You get that? All right. The degree of press freedom varies significantly across these models, from complete control in the communist theory to high levels of freedom in the libertarian approach. Now, if you were to compare and contrast on the flow of information, in the communist and authoritarian models, the flow of information is tightly controlled by the state to ensure it aligns with the government objectives. In contrast, the libertarian and social responsibility models promote a free flow of information, with the latter adding an ethical dimension to ensure diversity and accuracy. What about the purpose and responsibility? Okay, the purpose of the press under the communist and authoritarian theories is to support state policies and maintain social order, respectively. The libertarian model views the press as a platform for free expression and public debate, while the social responsibility model adds a layer of ethical responsibility to ensure that freedom serves the public good. Okay? So each of this model presents a different perspective on the role of the press in society, reflecting varying degrees of freedom, control, and responsibility. These theories provide a framework for analyzing and understanding the diverse media landscapes that exist around the world. Okay, so you can add a bit more, one sentence, just to mention which countries practice which type of media press theories, and I'll give you a mark for that one. Okay, so just give me an example. All right, so remember, one sentence, one mark. One sentence has to be solid, okay? No rubbish writing and all that. Okay, you get that? All right. Now, another question involves explaining the media influence theory, okay, which is the propaganda theory, cultivation theory, agenda setting, two-step flow theory, dependency theory, magic bullet, spiral of silence. You'll have to discuss how each of these theory proposes that media affects audience and public opinion, and you'll need to give some examples or case study where applicable, right? Now, the explanation for the propaganda theory is that media is used as a tool to deliberately manipulate public opinion and behavior towards a specific agenda. It focuses on the power of media messages to influence the masses in a direction desired by the propagandist, often by simplifying complex issues into clear, concise messages that appeal to emotions rather than rationally. Okay, when it comes to the media influence, the theory implies a direct and powerful influence on of media on audiences, assuming people are susceptible to the messages conveyed through propaganda. For example, you can use the World War II propaganda efforts by various governments, use posters, films, and broadcasts to boost morale, encourage enlistment, and demonize the enemy, effectively shaping public perception and attitudes towards the war effort. Now, there are more slides for the propaganda theory in the class that I've presented to you, meaning that I've already shared the slides with you before. I explained a lot on propaganda theory. You know, there's the gray color, black, white, etc., and all those things. You may mention it in your exam question as well. I'm not going to dwell on it too much in this presentation because everything has been provided for you, everything has been explained to you. So if you didn't come to class, you didn't pay attention, you were sleeping, you have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's not my fault, because some of the questions that you have been asking me on WhatsApp, it shows that some of you were not present in class. Either you didn't come, you didn't pay attention, you didn't even listen, your body's here but your mind is elsewhere. I have no idea. Okay, so I'm doing this as a favor to you, just to help you so that you can do well in your exam. Okay, so now the next one, cultivation theory. Cultivation theory posits that long-term exposure to television content or social media or any kind of media can shape viewers' perception of reality. It suggests that heavy viewers of television or media are more likely to perceive the real world in ways that reflect the most common and recurring messages of the television world, particularly regarding violence and fear. I've talked to you a lot about this and how cultivation theory influences people very deeply about their mindset, how they think, how they behave, how they act, and all of that. Okay, so what's the media influence? This theory suggests a gradual and subtle effect of media on audiences, leading to a distorted perception of reality based on the repetitive and consistent nature of television content. I told you before, you keep listening to sad songs, you're going to start being a sad person, okay? You're going to start feeling that you've broken up and stuff like that. I don't know. I told you before. Okay, example, people who watch a significant amount of crime dramas may believe that the world is more dangerous than it actually is. Phenomenon known as the mean world syndrome. Okay, you keep playing PUBG and all that, you're gonna think everything is violent in your life. I don't know, I have no idea. Okay, anyway, the third one is the agenda setting theory. Now again, there's lots of notes in the PowerPoint that I've shared with you in class before. It's a matter of just you opening it up, reading it up, and just understanding what it's about, because I've already explained it to you a million times. Okay, now for the agenda setting theory. The agenda setting theory argues that while the media may not tell us what to think, it is remarkably successful at telling us what to think about, okay, by selecting which issues are covered and how much prominence and space are given to them. The media shapes the public agenda and influences the importance placed on these issues by the public. Okay, what about the media influence? The theory indicates a strong role of media in shaping the public's perception of what issues are important, directing public attention and concern to selected topics. For example, extensive media coverage of climate change has increased public awareness and concern for environmental issues, influencing political agendas and policy discussion. You may give any other examples that you feel is suitable or something that you know about very well. Please do so. Okay. Now, the two-step flow theory. Okay. This theory suggests that the media effects are indirectly mediated by opinion leaders. Information from the media is first received by these opinion leaders who then interpret and relay it to others within their social networks who may be less active media consumers. Now there's I think there's like some pictures and graphs and drawings on explaining this. You may draw that in your final exam. I'll definitely give you a mark for that. Okay, so what about the media influence? This theory proposes a more complex interaction where media influence is filtered through personal relationships and social networks, reducing the direct impact of media on the masses. As an example, in modern context, influencers and bloggers on social media platforms act as opinion leaders, affecting their followers' opinions and behaviors regarding fashion, politics, products, and so many more. Okay? All right, now we have the dependency theory. This theory suggests that the degree of media's influence on individuals depend on how much they depend on the media for information. So this dependency can increase during times of crisis or personal uncertainty, making individuals more susceptible to media influence. So the media influence underscores a conditional influence based on the individual's reliance on media, suggesting that media effects are more pronounced under certain conditions of dependency. I gave you an example in the past where if you were directly involved or, you had some relatives or friends who were part of the MH370 missing airplane, any news that comes out based on that crisis or issue, you would be directly involved where you are 100% dependent on what happens, and whatever news that comes out regarding it will directly impact you. Okay, and then there's another example that you can give as well. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the public's heavy reliance on media for updates and safety information likely increased the media's influence on perceptions and behaviors regarding the virus, because you were depending on the media. You couldn't even go out of the house. You had no idea what's going on outside the world. You depended on the media regarding the COVID-19 issue. So anything that was stated on the media regarding the COVID-19 kind of like directly impacted you in a way, okay, because you were dependent on the media for those kind of issues, news. Then we have the magic bullet theory or the hypodermic needle theory. Okay, it's one of the earliest theories of media influence. It suggested that media messages are directly received and fully accepted by the audience. It assumes a passive audience where media has the power to inject its messages directly into the passive audience consciousness. This theory implies a direct, immediate, and powerful effect of media messages on the audience without accounting for individual differences in reception and interpretation. For example, early advertising and wartime propaganda were believed to have such direct effects, although later research questioned the theory's validity. I told you before in the past, during the early 1920s, when radio was first, newly introduced to the people were relying on the radio for any information, and the radio announcer made a drama that the alien is coming on Earth and invading the Earth population, etc. And people started going to chaos and panic, and it was terrible at that time. I gave you that as an example. If you don't remember, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that means that you were not present in class, you didn't pay attention, and I don't know what happened to you. Okay, so look at the slide as an example for this so that you can explain it in your exam. Okay, all right. So now, last but not least, is the spiral of silence theory. And I know some of you paid attention to this, and I think that you can draw me the diagram for this, and you will definitely get high marks. Okay, so what's the explanation for spiral of silence theory? The spiral of silence theory posits that individuals who perceive their opinions as being the minority or unpopular are likely to remain silent for fear of isolation. It means that just because you're the minority when it comes to a certain public opinion, you tend to keep quiet because you are scared that you are not the majority, because the majority might be having a certain type of strong opinions towards a certain issues, and because you're the minority, you tend to not speak up because you feel of fear that the majority will triumph you, so you tend to keep quiet even though you think you're right. Okay, so the media plays a crucial role in shaping perceptions of majority or minority opinions, thereby influencing individuals to speak out or remain silent. So I'm sure you've faced these kind of situations before. All right, so the media influence, according to this theory, media can significantly impact public discourse by amplifying certain opinions while minimizing others, contributing to a societal spiral of silence around particular issues. For example, social media platforms can serve as modern arenas for the spiral of silence, where users may hesitate to express dissenting views on hot button issues, for example, political or social topics, due to perceived majority sentiment and fear of backlash. Okay? So therefore, these theories collectively offer a nuanced understanding of the complex ways media can influence audience and public opinion, underlining the interaction between media content, audience characteristics, social dynamics, and the broader societal context. Okay, understand? All right. Now, the next question is to discuss the concepts of command and control warfare. We've talked about this in class briefly, so I'm going to explain to you how you can answer about the command and control on psychological operations, military deception, physical destruction, electronic warfare, and security measure. So what you have to do is you have to explain the effectiveness of these elements in disrupting or enhancing command and control systems within a military context, citing specific historical instances where these methods have been successfully implemented. Now, we have discussed this in class, if you remember. If you don't remember, again, same issue. I don't know whether you were present or not, but don't worry. I'll go through this with you right now. Pay attention, and you would be able to answer the questions effectively, hopefully. Now, I have provided you with all the notes in class. Again, please have a look at the PowerPoint notes that I have shared with you in the past. Go through them. You'll be able to answer this question easily. Now, let's take a look at this psychological operations. So it is aimed at influencing the perceptions, decisions, and behaviors of enemy forces, civilian populations, and even friendly or neutral parties. PSYOPs or psychological operations can demoralize enemy forces, sway public opinion, and support broader military objectives through the dissemination of propaganda, disinformation, and other means of psychological influence. All right. So how effective is this? It can be highly effective in undermining enemy morale and fostering dissent within enemy ranks. So you can give the example of what happened in World War II, which we have discussed. The Allied forces used PSYOPs extensively to undermine German soldiers' morale by dropping leaflets that emphasized the futility of their cause and the inevitability of Allied victory. So similarly, during the Vietnam War, the US deployed PSYOPs to demoralize North Vietnamese troops and sympathizers through though with mixed results due to the complex socio-political context. So you can explain this and you get full marks. All right. So the second one is the military deception. So what is military deception? It involves misleading, the enemy about one's intentions, capabilities, or positions to gain a tactical or strategic advantage. It can include the use of decoys, false information, disinformation, and camouflage to confuse or misdirect enemy decision-making process. Again, we have discussed this quite extensively. So how effective is it? Military deception has proven effective in numerous historical instances. So one of the most famous example is the Operation Bodyguard during World War II again, which successfully convinced the German High Command that the invasion would occur at past the Calais rather than Normandy. So they kind of like deceived the Germans by saying that the attack would happen elsewhere when they were trying to attack another place. Okay, so this deception included the creation of a phantom army led by General Patton, complete with inflatable tanks and fake radio traffics, which kept significant German forces away from the actual invasion site, contributing significantly to the Allies' success. Okay, so you can give any other examples if you would like. If you do not want to use this as the case study to your answer, no problem at all. Give any other examples that can explain your answer. Okay, so what about the electronic warfare? Okay, electronic warfare comprises military actions involving the use of electromagnetic and directed energy to control the electromagnetic spectrum and deny its use by the enemy. It includes jamming enemy communications and radar systems, deceiving electronic sensors, and protecting friendly electronic equipment from similar attacks. So how effective is this? The effectiveness of electronic warfare can significantly disrupt enemy command and control capabilities by interfering with their communications and sensor systems. For example, during the 1991 Gulf War, coalition forces used electronic warfare extensively to degrade Iraqi command and control capabilities. Contributing to the rapid defeat of Iraqi forces, jamming and deception efforts prevented Iraqi leaders from effectively coordinating their forces, while coalition electronic warfare measures protected Allied communications and navigation systems from Iraqi countermeasures. Okay, so each of these concepts of psychological operations, military deceptions, and electronic warfare plays a critical role in modern warfare, directly impacting an adversary's ability to make informed decisions and effectively control its forces. By targeting the enemy's mind, perceptions, and electronic capabilities, these methods can decisively shift the balance of power in favor of the employing force, as demonstrated in the historical context that I have just explained to you. Okay, you got that? Okay, so the other two concepts that I still need to discuss with you about is the physical destruction and security measures as defined within the context of command and control. Here, they target the tangible and protective elements of military operations respectively. So these concepts play a crucial role in both diminishing the adversary's capacity to conduct warfare and in safeguarding one's own capabilities from similar attacks. Okay, so what about the physical destruction? Physical destruction focuses on the direct kinetic destruction of the enemy's command and control assets, including communication centers, radar installations, and leadership nodes. The aim is to degrade or eliminate the enemy's ability to command its forces effectively, thereby disrupting operational cohesion and diminishing combat effectiveness. Okay, so how effective is this? The strategic bombing campaigns of World War II illustrate the concept of physical destruction aimed at crippling the enemy's war-making capacity, including command and control centers. So, for instance, the Allied bombing of German cities and industrial centers aimed to destroy the Nazi war machine physical infrastructure, impacting their ability to lead and supply their military forces effectively. In more recent conflicts, precision-guided munitions have allowed for more targeted physical destruction of command and control nodes with fewer collateral damages, such as during the 1991 Gulf War, when precision strikes against Iraqi command centers were pivotal in crippling Iraq's military leadership and command infrastructure. Again, you can use any other examples that are suitable if you do not want to use this as your answer. So what about the security measures? Security measures encompass the range of defensive actions and protocols designed to protect one's own command and control capabilities from physical destruction, electronic warfare, cyber attacks, espionage, and other forms of attack. This includes physical security, operational security, cyber defense mechanisms, encryption of communications, and counterintelligence efforts. Okay, now what about the effectiveness? Okay, the use of security measures to protect command and control assets is vital for maintaining operational integrity and ensuring that military forces can communicate, coordinate, and execute mission effectively. Okay, for example, during the Cold War, both NATO and Warsaw Pact forces invested heavily in secure, hardened command posts and communication links to protect against the risk of nuclear strikes and sabotage. In the digital age, cyber defense mechanisms have become increasingly critical, as seen in the U.S. Department of Defense establishment of the United States Cyber Command to protect its networks and ensure the security of its command and control systems against cyber threats. So in summary, physical destruction and security measures are complementary concepts in command and control warfare, while physical destruction seeks to directly undermine the enemy's military effectiveness through the kinetic targeting of command and control assets. Security measures are essential for protecting those same capabilities with one's own forces. The balance between offensive actions to disrupt enemy operations and defensive measures to safeguard one's capabilities is a critical aspect of modern military strategy, highlighting the complex interplay between these concepts in achieving strategic objectives. Okay, got that? Okay, for the next question, it's going to ask you to discuss strategies adopted by the United States to guide public perception through agenda setting and propaganda during the war on terrorism. Okay, so you'll have to also evaluate the effectiveness of various communication tactics, including but not limited to pinpointing the enemy and card stacking. And you'll have to illustrate your analysis with case studies highlighting these techniques in practice and discuss the broader implication on public opinion and international relations. Okay, so how are you going to answer this question? Remember, the things that I'm presenting to you are all really easy. If you have problems in understanding what I'm trying to explain, it shows that you have to improve your English language understanding. Okay, by right, whatever we've discussed in class, we've repeated it so many times, we've talked about it again and again, and it's a matter of you paying attention or not. And if you have difficulties in understanding the English language, I would suggest that you improve. Okay, all right, so what are the strategies for guiding public perception during the war on terrorism? Okay, the United States adopted several strategies to guide public perception and garner support for its policies and military actions during the war on terrorism. So these strategies include framing. Okay, we've talked about it in class before. Framing terrorism as a global threat. Okay, so what did the US do? The US government framed terrorism, especially after the September 11th attacks, as a global existential threat that required an immediate and decisive response. This framing was designed to justify both domestic and international military actions, including the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. So, by presenting terrorism as a threat to global peace and security, the US aimed to unite the international community and the American public in support of its war on terrorism. What else did it do? It's emphasizing the moral high ground. Okay, so here the US frequently positioned itself as defending the values of freedom, democracy, and human rights against the evil of terrorism. So again and again, they keep repeating itself that they are the defenders of human rights and democracy and etc. And they're doing this for the sake of the people. All right. So this moral dichotomy was used to rally support, to gain support among its citizens and allies, painting the military campaigns as not just strategic necessities, but also moral imperatives, meaning that they're trying to convince you that they're doing this for the right reasons, even though we know they're not. Okay. So then they started to highlight success stories. Okay, how did they do this? Using the media. The US government and media outlets often highlighted successes in the war on terrorism, such as the toppling of the Taliban in Afghanistan, the capture or killing of key terrorist figures. You can have a look at what happened to Osama bin Laden and etc. And the liberation of cities. These narratives were intended to maintain public support for the war effort by demonstrating progress and effectiveness in combating terrorism. Again, we've discussed this so many times, and I hope you understand this. Okay, so what are how effective is the communication tactics? Okay, number one, we talked about pinpointing the enemy. All right, have a look at your slides again that we discussed in class. There's more points there that you can use to support your argument in the exam as well. But here I'll read to you when it comes to pinpointing the enemy. This tactic involves focusing public attention on specific groups or individuals as the embodiment of the terrorist threat, such as Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. This simplifies the complex nature of global terrorism into a more understandable and direct narrative. So they make it easy for you to pinpoint, meaning that they make it like a symbol where it's easy to identify. So the effectiveness of this approach can be seen in the widespread public support for military actions against these identified enemies. However, it can also oversimplify the problem and potentially lead to the marginalization of communities associated with the enemy, both domestically and internationally. Next, we have the card stacking. So what is card stacking? This involves selectively presenting information to the public to create a desired impression while omitting opposing viewpoints or facts. For example, in the lead up to the Iraq War, the emphasis on Iraq's supposed weapons of mass destruction program and its alleged links to terrorism were used to justify the invasion. Okay, again and again, we've discussed this, where they campaigned that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, where the US used this as a reason to invade Iraq. So the effectiveness of card stacking can be seen in the initial strong support for the Iraq war among the American public. However, as it became clear that the intelligence was flawed, meaning they lied, and the expected outcomes were not materializing, public support decreased, demonstrating the risk of this approach in losing public trust over time. Okay, so now who will trust the Americans again because of what happened here? All right, so there are some case studies and broader implications that you can use. Number one is the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. The US government use of media briefings, press releases, and public addresses in the early 2000s effectively communicated its agenda to the public. The pinpointing of Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein as key enemies mobilized public and political support for military interventions. However, the long-term effectiveness was undermined by the prolonged nature of the conflicts, civilian casualties, and the emergence of new terrorist groups, which led to increasing skepticism and war fatigue among the American public and criticism from international allies. What about the broader implications? The strategies and tactics used by the US in guiding public perception during the war on terrorism have had lasting implications on public opinion and international relations. Domestically, they have contributed to a polarized debate about the balance between national security and civil liberties. Internationally, they have affected the US reputation very bad, with some allies questioning the unilateral actions and the justification for military intervention. The reliance on propaganda and agenda-setting tactics has also highlighted the challenges in maintaining credibility and trust in an era of global information where counter-narratives and independent journalism can challenge official statements. So, in conclusion, while the US employed various strategies and communication tactics to guide public perception during the war on terrorism, the effectiveness of these efforts has been mixed. While initially successful in garnering support for military actions in the beginning, over time, the complexities of the conflicts and the discrepancies between the presented narratives and the realities on the ground have led to public skepticism and challenges to US credibility, both domestically and internationally. Understand? Okay, so next the question is about describing the difference between misinformation and disinformation. Unfortunately, some of you were not able to answer this question properly in the midterm exam. I don't know what happened there. Again, it's a lot to do with not paying attention and not reading and not making the effort to, do well in your work. So it's not my fault, it's your fault. Okay, so then you have to also explain with examples on how misinformation and disinformation can affect society. Okay, so what's the distinction between, or what's the difference between misinformation and disinformation? Okay, besides the spelling, one begins with an M, one begins with a D. The primary distinction between misinformation and disinformation lies in the intent upon the reason behind the spread of false or misleading information. There are more notes in the slide that I've given you, and I've explained about this very extensively in class. Okay, hopefully those who paid attention can do very well. All right. So number one, misinformation refers to false or inaccurate information that is spread without the intent to deceive. Those sharing misinformation may believe it to be true and are not aware of its falsehood. Okay, the lack of intent to harm or deceive is what differentiates misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation can arise from misunderstandings, errors in reporting, or the sharing of information without verifying its accuracy. Again, we have discussed this a lot of times. What about disinformation? Disinformation is false information that is deliberately created and disseminated with the intent to deceive and mislead others. The creation and spread of disinformation are motivated by the desire to influence public opinion, manipulate perceptions, or achieve specific objectives, often for political, personal, or financial gain. This information involves a level of manipulation and is designed to be persuasive and credible to the targeted audience. Okay. So now, what are the effects of misinformation and disinformation on society? Misinformation examples and effects. You can choose to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic if you like, especially the effects of misinformation on public health. During the COVID-19 pandemic, misinformation about the virus origins, modes of transmission, and the efficacy and safety of vaccines proliferated on social media. People who believed and shared this misinformation often did so thinking they were helping others, not realizing the information was false. This led to vaccine hesitancy, disregard for public health measures, and ultimately contributed to the spread of the virus and preventable death. Then we have the natural disasters. Misinformation can spread rapidly in the chaos following natural disasters, such as incorrect information about the extent of damage, affected areas, or availability of emergency services. This can hinder response efforts, create panic, and result in misallocation of resources. Now, what about disinformation examples and effect? We can talk about political manipulation. A notable example of disinformation is the interference in the 2016 United States presidential election, where social media platforms were used to spread false information to influence voter perception and sow discord. This deliberate campaign aimed to manipulate public opinion, undermine trust in the electoral process, and exacerbate political polarization. Then we have the example of financial markets, where disinformation campaigns can also target financial markets, such as the spread of false rumors about a company to manipulate its stock price. This can lead to financial losses for investors, damage to the reputation of companies, and overall instability of financial markets. Okay, I didn't give this example in class, but I'm giving it to you now. You can choose to use this as an example for your exam if you'd like. If not, no worries. You can give any example that is suitable, as long as it makes sense and as long as it's something that is known to be factual. Okay, so now both misinformation and disinformation have profound effects on society, as we all know. Misinformation can lead to confusion, misplaced trust, and poor decision making among the public. It erodes the foundation of informed discourse and debate, which are essential for a functioning democracy. Disinformation, with its malicious intent, can further erode trust in institutions, media, and the government. It can polarize communities, undermine democratic processes, and incite violence. The deliberate nature of disinformation makes it particularly insidious, as it exploits social and political divisions for specific agendas. So, addressing the challenges posed by misinformation and disinformation requires a multifaceted approach, including media literacy, education, fact-checking, and the responsible use of social media platforms to identify and mitigate the spread of false information. Of course, you can expand further on this to suit your arguments and give better points and content when it comes to writing for this question. Okay? Right. Now, the next thing that you have to discuss about is the strategies that a country that practices freedom of speech could implement to address the rise of disinformation without compromising free speech rights. And you'll have to explain the potential obstacles and advantages of the strategies that you are highlighting. Okay, some of these strategies that you could mention in addressing disinformation without compromising free speech is that countries that value freedom of speech face the challenge of combating disinformation while preserving this fundamental right. So, implementing strategies that respect free speech while mitigating the harmful effects of disinformation requires a nuanced approach. So, some of the strategies that you can suggest may include promoting media literacy and critical thinking. So things like education programs that focuses on media literacy can empower citizens to critically evaluate the information they encounter. This includes understanding how to check sources, recognize biased reporting, and differentiate between credible news and disinformation. Then the second suggestion may include support fact-checking organizations. Governments can support independent fact-checking organizations financially or through public endorsements, helping them reach a wider audience. So these organizations play a crucial role in debunking false narratives and providing accurate information to the public. Then you may also suggest a transparent labeling of information. Social media platforms and news outlets can implement systems for labeling content that has been fact-checked as false or misleading without removing it outright. So this approach respects the right to free speech while informing the public about the credibility of the information. Then you can also mention about strengthening legal frameworks against malicious disinformation. Laws can be crafted to target the deliberate creation and spread of disinformation with the intent to harm the public interest, such as election interference or incitement to violence, without broadly criminalizing false statements. Then you can also mention something about promoting responsible journalism. Encouraging standards of accuracy and accountability in journalism through professional codes of ethics and self-regulation can help encounter disinformation. So public funding for independent public broadcasting can also ensure that reliable information is accessible. So what about the potential obstacles and advantages of these strategies? Let's talk about the obstacle first. Number one may be the balancing act. Striking the right balance between combating disinformation and upholding free speech rights can be challenging. There's a risk that even well-intentioned measures could be perceived as or become tools for censorship or political manipulation. Then there's the digital and global nature of disinformation. The internet's borderless nature makes it challenging to address disinformation that originates from outside the country's jurisdiction. Then you have the resistance from platforms and stakeholders. Social media platforms and other entities may resist government-led initiatives due to concerns over privacy, autonomy, and financial implications. Then you have the variability in public perceptions. Public skepticism towards government and media institutions can hinder the effectiveness of any strategy, particularly if trust in these institutions are low. Okay, what about the advantages? You can talk about empowered public. Media literacy and critical thinking skills equip citizens to navigate the information landscape more safely, reducing their susceptibility to disinformation. Then you can mention something about increased public trust. Transparent and accountable measures can increase public trust in both media and government institutions by demonstrating a commitment to factual accuracy and the public good. Then the resilience to disinformation. A well-informed public and a robust fact-checking ecosystem can create a more resilient society that is less likely to be swayed by disinformation campaigns. Then the protection of democratic processes. Targeted legal measures and responsible journalism can protect essential democratic processes such as elections from the corrosive effects of disinformation. So implementing these strategies requires careful consideration and continuous evaluation to ensure they effectively address disinformation without infringing on free speech rights. Collaboration between governments, tech companies, civil societies, and international partners is also crucial to tackling the global challenge of disinformation. So basically, we've discussed everything that needs to be in your preparation for your final exams. I cannot promise whether everything will come out as we have discussed today, but it's important that you go through whatever we have discussed in this video and go through all the notes that I have given you in class. That is very, very important for you to read through, discuss with your friends, and talk about it. And if you miss a lot of classes, it is very important that you talk to somebody that did not miss the class. Okay. Other than that, we have discussed the topics so many times. I've repeated some of the information again and again so that you remember. If you don't, there's something wrong with you. I'm really sorry. So it's either you step up, or you're not going to do very well in this exam or this whole course. So I suggest that you try your very best, and good luck.